Hello, I'm Brigham Avery, and welcome to Hollywood and Ivy, where Sunset Boulevard meets Addison and Clark. The show where we get to know celebrity Cub fans from the entertainment world as we take you from Wrigley Field to the red carpet. Today's guest is a living musical legend, founder of the Smashing Pumpkins, multiple Grammy Award-winning performer, wrestling promoter, and most importantly, a lifelong Cubs fan. Welcome, Billy Corgan. Today we have our first musical guest, Billy Corgan. So great to have you. Welcome to Hollywood and Ivy.
Thank you. Here I am in the belly of the beast.
The first time you saw Wrigley Field during the day, your thoughts were?
Well, I probably saw Wrigley Field for the first time in person somewhere around 1972 or 73. My grandmother, Conchetta, was a massive listen to every game on the radio or television.
A big diehard.
Diehard is not even close to it.
Okay.
She was like stalker level Cubs fan. She would weep when they would lose. Old school Italian.
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah.
She was down with the team. So that I learned to love the Cubs through her. So I didn't have any choice. It was just like, you're a Cubs fan. So the first time I saw the ballpark was, about 72 or 73. And it's crazy because all these years later, 50 years later, I still get that same feeling every time I walk in the ballpark. There's something sort of beautiful, magisterial about the park, but also you connect to that history, whether it's Babe Ruth or Cap Anson, right? There's something about the lineage there, and I think I love the modern ballparks, but there's something about Wrigley that connection to the past is always magical to me.
When you walk in, it's like you're walking in again for the first time, and you have that past connection, but it's so fresh and new.
Yes, it's weird because you would think at some point that would wear off, and it never
does. Yeah.
As far as the question of the first night game, I can't really remember because I was on the side of I don't want night games. But when I actually did go, probably a year or two after they started that, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. There's something about the way it lights up at night that I really enjoy. And I will say, having seen Cub playoff games at night, that atmosphere, Wrigley at night in a playoff game, is pretty amazing.
The intensity of that.
There's something about night. Look, I'm a rock guy. We play at night almost always.
Yeah.
Something about the lights, the vibe, something about night. The beers are kicking in for people.
It's kind of like the intensity.
It's a different intensity.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Remember the movie The Natural, where they have the big game at night at the end, and they turn the lights on, and just the intensity building towards that is kind of what we're
all I remember about The Natural was this is never going to happen to me as a Cubs fan.
Right.
I'm never going to have this moment, so I got to watch a movie to experience this vibe.
Yes.
So,
live vicariously through Redford.
Now that we're a post-World Series, now we're into a different form of rehab.
Yeah.
It's like, will it ever happen again?
Right.
But
yeah. You mentioned that two of your favorite players growing up were Bobby Dernier and Andre Dawson.
Yeah.
Talk about why you like those guys so much and what was the love for them. Obviously great players, but what specifically?
Jose Cardinal, too. But Mr. Dernier, I just loved the way he played the game. There was a certain joy that he brought to the game. And when you were a Cubs fan back in the day, obviously Bob Dernier ended up playing on some winning Cubs teams, but a lot of those years weren't. So how the team carried itself, guys like Jose Cardinal and Bob Dernier, Keith Moreland, there was something about the way they carried themselves in the game that you kind of would key on to if you were watching a losing team. It was about more how the guys played and how they handled losing.
Right.
Andre Dawson, I think, was really the first player that the Cubs had in my lifetime, because I was, of course, at the very end of Ernie Banks' career. He was the first player we thought, wow, this organization is taking winning seriously. Here's a true top-tier future Hall of Fame player. He changed Cubs culture internally to like, okay, now we're getting serious.
Who's your favorite Cubs pitcher of all time, would you say, Billy?
Now, I remember Maddox when he started with the Cubs.
In '86.
And so I was annoyed that he left. So I wasn't big on him coming back. Now, obviously, a great pitcher. I was more a Sutcliffe guy because, and we've seen this, of course, into his broadcasting career, Rick Sutcliffe played with a particular swagger, like a gun. He walked like a gunslinger, and he walked kind of like John Wayne. He kind of had that weird hitch in his walk. I was there the day that they signed Sutcliffe, and he showed up at Wrigley Field. For whatever reason, I'm on the left field wall waiting for an autograph like a kid. So I was there the day he came walking on the field, but he wasn't starting that day for whatever reason. But when he walked on the field with that Rick Sutcliffe walk, I get goosebumps thinking about it because you're like, okay, this guy's a winner. He carried himself like a winner. He pitched like a winner. He thought like a winner.
The Smashing Pumpkins.
Yes.
They were formed in '88. The first year.
It's technically 87.
Okay.
But we say 88 because it's the easier version of the
Gotcha,
story.
gotcha. The same year that lights shed upon Wrigley Field. So just talk about the forming of them and the creation of the name and the essence of that.
Sure. The name was a joke. Somebody said something about Smashing Pumpkins at Halloween. And I said, oh, that'd be a good band name, never thinking that 35 years later I'd still be explaining it.
Right.
And of course, everyone tried to talk me out of it, and it just stuck. But the thing that's more important about that band was forming in '87, '88. We used to rehearse above the Cubby Bear, right? So imagine us in goth gear, shaved eyebrows, the whole gimmick.
Nice mascara.
Occasionally. Not necessarily at 4 p.m., but as it would often happen, we would be loading our equipment out of the Cubby Bear for a gig on a weekend with the Cubs fans standing on the street assailing us verbally, as only Chicagoans can do. What are you guys, going to a funeral?
Yeah.
You know, we had, sorry, I can't do it as well as Joe Mantegna can do it. But
Right. 1996 was a huge year for the Smashing Pumpkins.
7 MTV Awards, we won a couple Grammys. It was a good time. We were part of the club. That's
Right.
before they kicked us out of the club.
Oh.
Yes. Now we're back in the club.
Who's your favorite Chicago band? Your favorite Chicago musician? Who inspires and who stands out to you in our city?
Well, I always grew up a Cheap Trick fan, obviously from Rockford, so I don't know if Rockford counts.
Right.
It's almost like a different world over there. But Cheap Trick, one of the greatest Chicago bands. But certainly, like all Chicagoans, we love the band Chicago. In many ways, the band Chicago was the soundtrack for that city in the 70s. And of course, Styx was a great Chicago band. But there were other great bands that never kind of reached necessarily national prominence off Broadway. Shoes was another great band.
What is it about baseball that you love so much? What really captures your passion?
Great question. I think baseball's the greatest game. I mean, I've seen rugby, I've seen Australian rules football, I've seen obviously all the major sports leagues in America. What I love about baseball is every game is different. You can go see the two best starters in the National League and think it's going to be 1-0 today. And by the second inning, it's 7-3. One of the starters is out. Here comes the middle reliever who locks the game down. The team comes back. It's like going to see a movie with the same setup. Like, you know, Joe Mantegna in the Mob movie. You think, okay, I kind of know how this is going to go, and it ends up being like a rom-com. You know what I mean? It ends up being like the totally opposite movie. I love that about baseball. That it's never quite what you think it's going to be, and every game's always a different adventure.
Anything can happen.
I don't think I've ever seen the same baseball game twice, which is amazing. And I've certainly seen the same soccer game twice, the same NFL game twice. You know, we've all seen the 37-34 NFL shootout. Oh my God, he made the catch. Only baseball does what baseball does. And what I love, one last thing, is even though it's a team sport, there's something about the mano-a-mano of the pitcher-hitter. That headspace, check your ego at the door. I'm going to beat you by throwing smoke.
Tell me about the National Wrestling Alliance, your history with that. How did you get into that?
Sure. Oldest wrestling organization in the world, started in 1948, so this is our 75th year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Obviously, I wasn't around for all 75, at least not that I remember. Yeah, it was basically sort of a brand that in many eyes had seen their best days behind them. I bought it sort of on the bottom and have built it back up to where it's respected again. And we're running shows all over. We just ran shows in Australia and Mexico, and pretty crazy business to be in. But obviously a lot of connection there between sports because you're dealing with athletes and sort of how to build the team. And so I think back a lot of things, how I perceived as a fan, sports cultures and what were winning cultures. And I've tried to build that with my organization.
This segment of Hollywood and Ivy is brought to you by the Salsa King of Chicago. Welcome back to Hollywood and Ivy. Today we're visiting with Billy Corgan. What Cubs team is most near and dear to your heart? Which really captures your soul as a Cub fan? Who do you love the most as far as you?
1978 Chicago Cubs.
Oh, really? Why is that?
I think that was the year, so I would have been about 10, 11 years old. That's where I really fell in love with baseball at a deeper level. I was playing baseball all the time as a kid. I loved who was on the team. It was a terrible team. So I had to really lean into like why I love baseball with a terrible team. Where a lot of my friends weren't Cubs fans because they didn't want to watch a team that was losing. I sort of watched between the cracks of the things, and I tried to find things that I could attach to, like the way somebody played the game, or somebody who wasn't expected to have a great game sort of surpassed the expectation or something. So that's the team, I think, from my childhood. And I actually have one of those classic photos that they used to put out with all the guys' faces that they'd sell at a gas station. I have that in my home.
The 78 Cubs.
The 1978 Chicago Cubs.
Wow, the year you became a Cub fan.
No, I was a Cubs fan going about 72, 73. I had no
Gotcha.
choice because of my grandmother,
Right.
Conchetta. But what I'm saying is that's the year I took possession as a person of my love for the Cubs and
Right.
my love of Wrigley Field and my love of the game of baseball. Harry Carey, the great, obviously St. Louis Cardinals, Chicago White Sox, and eventually the Chicago Cubs, Hall of Fame broadcaster, one of the greatest ever. Harry Carey used to say, "Isn't it amazing that whoever decided, that it was going to be 90 feet from home to first, isn't it amazing that no one's ever figured out how to beat that?" Meaning a routine ground ball still almost always results in an out. Like the physics of baseball is so perfect. Like
It really is.
and I think I'll defer to Harry here, who obviously saw a lot more baseball than I did. When Harry Carey would talk about baseball being the perfect game, and Vin Scully, that's what they were talking about. It's already perfect. Leave that part alone.
Right. So you're a big Harry Carey fan. Did he ever try and spell Smashing Pumpkins backwards? That would have been interesting to hear that. Were you ever on the air with him? And Billy?
I wasn't famous enough during the Harry years to land in the booth with them. When the band started taking off in
Right.
'91 to his last year, I was on the road. I think I'll give you the first 3 Smashing Pumpkins tours. 14 months, 14 months, and 22 months.
Oh my God.
Not a lot of time for baseball.
Right. You've sang the 7th inning stretch before at Wrigley Field. Is that
Poorly,
right?
yeah, poorly, yes.
Poorly?
In fact, I sang, did you know this? I sang the 7th inning stretch at Game 7 after the Bartman game.
Oh my goodness.
And the story on that was the day of Game 6, the Cubs called me and said, "We don't think there's going to be a Game 7, but if there is a Game 7, will you sing?"
Yes.
So I was already booked the day of the Bartman game. I went to the Bartman game, saw it live, heard the satanic roar start up as every Cubs fan in the universe figured out the curse is back, baby.
You just felt it. It's crazy.
Okay, I'm a musician, right?
Right. The energy.
I listen to crowds to key off,
Yeah.
is this weird music I'm playing working? If you're in a weird band like I am, you pay particular attention to the sound of the
Yes.
crowd.
Try to gauge the-
So I'm going to do a very poor imitation.
Okay.
Okay. I am along the right field line, pretty close to the Marlins bullpen.
Yes.
I'm watching the body language inning to inning,
Yeah.
and they're walking like this, Eeyore, because they're going to lose.
Right.
And they are going to lose.
Yes.
The Cubs are. They're
Mark
the team.
Pryor was not going to be beat.
Not that Mark
No.
Pryor. No, sir. So here comes the play. And by the way, ironically, I'd been out the night before with Moises Alou. Don't ask me how I was in that particular movie. Right?
Yes.
And he went home early because he had a big game the next
Right.
day. So there's my friend Moises, who I was just hanging out with.
Yeah.
Here he comes. Up, Bartman, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Rest is history. Okay. You hear, whoa, crowd noise.
Yeah.
I'm listening because that's what I do.
Right.
And then I hear, as everyone realizes, wait, the fan touched the ball. Wait, this is the Cubs, the GOAT, the curse. Montage.
Yes.
And here's the sound.
That's amazing.
As we say in Goth, the end is nigh.
Your thoughts on this current Cubs team, the new additions to this team, especially Dansby Swanson from Atlanta
Yeah.
and Bellinger from the Dodgers. Kind of we talked about the winning players of Andre Dawson, and these guys certainly have winning pedigrees. Do you think they're going to bring a lot to the North Side? Are you happy with the new additions of the Cubs?
I'm an Ian Happ fan. I think he's an underrated professional baseball player.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, though. He's become a great player. He won. He was an All-Star last year. He won a Gold Glove, but he's really turning into something special. So I think players like him and Dansby Swanson and Nico Horner. There's a good foundation, so I like the speed, and
Well,
I like the fact that these guys...
Hap's an interesting thing because when he had struggles and they sent him to the minors and all that stuff, that's probably why a lot of teams didn't try to poach him away with a bigger deal.
Yeah.
So now that's kind of worked out, but what's the point? He's been in the Cubs franchise for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he's kind of found his groove, so it's kind of a fortunate thing for the Cubs. Absolutely. Welcome back to Hollywood and Ivy. Today, Billy Corgan is our guest. Where were you November 2nd, 2016, when everything changed?
10 rows back, sitting behind home plate.
In Cleveland?
Yes, sir.
Amazing.
I had an incredible seat. The rain delay comes, so everybody goes, to the hot dog stand to get out of the rain. How long was the rain delay?
13 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that 13 minutes, and the Cubs, the momentum had shifted.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't look good for our old. And by the way, the curse baby is still there. And one of my friends said to me, "What do you think's going to happen?" And I thought, you should get, as you do. He'd go, "I think they're going to win."
Right.
So when they came back out and the momentum had shifted, and who's the player that's kind of giving?
Jason Hayward.
Jason Hayward is giving
the pep talk.
Okay, we didn't know that was going on in the tunnel underneath.
Right.
They came out. They looked like the Cubs that had.
They got their mojo back.
Yes, whatever happened.
Yeah.
So never forget that rain delay.
Exactly.
Because that was the momentum shifter. Because when they came back, they played different. They looked focused. The body language was different.
What was your emotional reality at that moment?
I thought of my grandmother, the one who introduced me to the team. If you don't mind a quick story.
Please.
As I said to you previously, my grandmother was an every day, every game, every inning Cubs fan. She taught me, you are not a fan if you don't care about everything, every player, everything. So I thought of her and this one thing that happened. When I would go to the ballpark in the 70s, on Ladies' Day, do you know what Ladies' Day was? Ladies' Day, I believe if you paid $3 and you were a lady, you could bring kids for free. So they would open the gates at 10:30, day game.
Yep.
We would go in, there'd be nobody in the park. Like, nobody, just us. Eventually, players come out, warm up, run, batting practice, fungo, was that the game? Fungo, right? Watch the game. Then we would stay in the park till everyone had left. Why? I don't know, because we went one time a year. So she wanted to soak up every moment of it. And then we would leave and go stand and wait for the players to come out and get in their cars with their disco shirts on. This is the 70s.
That's right.
But on this one time, in our one game a year, we're leaving, we're holding hands. I'm a little kid, we're going out the door, and she spies a gentleman standing by himself. There's nobody in the park other than the seat flippers. And we make a beeline for the guy. And my grandmother starts weeping, copious, like she's seeing the Madonna. It's Randy Huntley.
Wow.
Okay?
He had that effect on her.
Yes, because that's how much she loved the Cubs. You understand?
Yeah.
I saw this as a kid, weeping, my grandmother. And Randy Huntley's like,
who are you?
He's retired.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Mr. Huntley. Wow. And he was very nice.
Yeah.
Fast forward, some 40 years later, a friend calls, "Hey, I'm in Arizona. Hey, do you mind if I bring Randy Huntley to your show tonight? He'd like to meet you." He doesn't know the story at all.
Randy didn't know the story?
No. Wow. I'd never met him. He comes in my dressing room, lovely person, great, talking Cubs. When I got to know him just a little bit where I felt like I could launch this on him, I told him the story. And he almost felt embarrassed. He said, "I'm sorry, I don't remember." I said, "Look, I get it. There's a lot of stuff I don't remember either.
Yeah.
But so you know, the way you treated my grandmother that day, I'm forever your fan."
Isn't that lovely?
And that's the Cubs in a nutshell.
It is.
It's that matters to me.
The passion.
The passion.
And the love. And I'll tell you what, it was the unrewarded.
Why are we sitting here in Hollywood talking about the Cubs, right?
It's the balance. And what this show is the anthology, I've told everybody, of you going to the game as a kid. All that anthology time passes. Fast forward to Randy Huntley coming to visit you in your dressing room. So it's all that. It's the shared passion of you as a Cub fan and coinciding with a successful career in music, in television,
Yes.
whatever that is. So it's that essence of it. It's
And what did we
your
talk about for
story.
30 minutes backstage at my show?
Tell me.
The Cubs.
I love it.
What do you think about this team? What do you know?
Right.
He's a catcher.
Yeah.
Tell me what's wrong with this pitcher. Randy breaking down
All the specifics.
Yes.
The nuances.
Hello.
The nuts and the bolts, right?
Hello?
Yes.
Are you kidding?
Yes.
Tell me why this guy can't get that guy out well.
Right.
And you get the inside
Yeah.
baseball, no pun intended,
Right.
from his perspective of why the team's messed up or whatever.
Isn't that great?
But as I'm sitting there talking to him,
Yeah.
I still see me as a little kid and my grandmother weeping in front of Randy Hundley.
It's all there.
That is amazing to me.
You had to be a big Ron Santo fan with your passion
Oh.
right here. He was the biggest, most passionate Cubs player, later announcer in the history of the organization. Talk about him.
I got to meet Mr. Santo a couple times. Lovely, sweetest guy. Wanted to understand rock and roll. So imagine me talking to Ron Santo about rock and roll.
Yeah.
And he, of course, when we would go to commercial break a little bit, he would tell me about bands he had met back in the day.
Now set the context. So you were on the air with him,
A
right?
couple times.
You were on the
couple
okay.
times.
Now how was that?
I think it was when I sang the stretch. They bring
And
you in the
yeah,
booth.
you stayed on. Okay.
But
right.
the first thing you noticed when you met Ron Santo was the hands.
Yeah.
Ryan Sandberg, same thing.
Yeah.
These guys got like mitts for hands.
Right.
That's like every kid, I thought maybe I could play in the major leagues. Yeah. No
Yeah,
shot.
everybody does. Isn't that
Okay,
great?
God bless. But the point is, when you meet a true major leaguer and you see the size of their freaking hands, and you realize that's what makes them be able to catch that ball and all that stuff, obviously with the other gifts that go with it. So, but Mr. Santo, put it this way, sometimes I meet people and I think, God forbid I'm ever trapped in an elevator with this person, right?
Right.
Ron Santo is a guy you want to be trapped in an elevator with for 12 hours.
All the
What a
stories.
generous, loving person, and bled Cub blue.
It is the 35th anniversary of the Smashing Pumpkins this October. How do you feel about that anniversary? Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm tired. I'm really tired.
Right.
I'm tired of it all.
Gotcha.
No, it's awesome. We have 3/4 of the original band back together, which for many years didn't seem possible. And we're out doing some of the biggest shows of our musical lives. And I mean, the band in many ways is bigger than ever. So it's like a magical dream come true. And it all started in Chicago.
Absolutely. So the same year the Smashing Pumpkins were formed, lights lit up Wrigley Field.
I'm still.
Right. Was that unique in the time the band was formed? Do you remember that?
Yeah, because I was against it, because I was a day gamer.
Yeah.
Like a conspiracy theory thing.
Of course.
I was a day gamer. So yeah.
Crazy.
But I grew to love it.
The thing about music that's amazing, we were just talking about this, is we talked about David Lee Roth and Mr. Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen's father, and he would tell them on the bus sometimes, he goes, the thing about music is you never forget where you were the first time you heard 33 or Jump.
Sure.
And you never forget where you were and who you were. So who you were kind of brings you back, and that's kind of an important element. And you were just talking about that, the power of your music and bringing people back, and just you can't put a price on sentimental value.
I mean, I've heard 10,000 stories of my kid was born to this song, or I got married to this song, or when we buried my grandfather, we listened to this song as a family and cried, and it all starts with this simple act of just picking up a guitar and going, well, that sounds interesting,
Yeah.
But it's mind-blowing because you can never truly understand the effect that you have, because for every story you hear, there's another 100 that you don't hear. It's a very powerful medium.
I call it the ripple relatability, because you start one thing and then the ripple effect just affects people and they can all relate. Yeah. Well, it's been great having you.
Thank
Billy,
you.
we don't have a guest book on our show for guests to sign. We do have a guest ball. So I'm going to pass this to you right there. Oh,
All right.
Great catch.
I'll find a spot.
Perfect. It's been great to talk. And
You've ruined my music career, because when I talk about sports, then all the goths.
right, absolutely.
But I've enjoyed being here today.
You've been a wonderful guest. And thank you for being here. And everyone, thank you so much for watching Hollywood and Ivy, where Sunset Boulevard meets Addison and Clark. Hollywood and Ivy is brought to you by the Salsa King of Chicago. Available now at Jewel and Osco throughout Illinois. Salsa so fresh, it's like you made it yourself. Catering for Hollywood and Ivy is provided by Dave's Hot Chicken. Brigham Avery's wardrobe provided by Clark Street Sports. Hollywood and Ivy was filmed live at Universal Studios in Hollywood, California. Hollywood and Ivy is a presentation of Brigham Avery Productions.